Akot, the station, as you know, with a groove and style and groove. My name is Annkio Briggs, and you are listening to Saving the Niger Delta with Annkio Briggs. Today is the 11th of December, and counting down to Christmas. We have exactly 14 days to go for Christmas, 2 weeks to go for Christmas. Once again, I wish you a Merry Christmas, as I know you also wish me a very Merry Christmas. Well, so much has gone on, still going on as usual. One thing we cannot say about Nigeria is that nothing is happening in Nigeria in terms of news or things that are happening that we should know about. In the last week, on Friday, we all saw what happened, and we're still seeing what happened in Abuja to Showore, between Showore and the DSS. We definitely are aware that the actions of the DSS, as it is claimed, is wrong, is undemocratic, it is unacceptable. And then we also last week we spoke about what concerns us here in the Niger Delta, which is the issue of NDDC, the probing of NDDC, the setup of the three-man committee, or the interim committee for the Niger Delta Development Commission, and then also they appointed the names that the president sent to the National Assembly. The National Assembly was saying that they wanted to swear them in, and that the budget would not be defended by any other body but the body that the names had been sent to the National Assembly by the president, and so much was going on there. Now, the NDDC is a major concern, should be a major concern for the Niger Delta region. It should be a major concern for the oil companies that are operating here. It should be a major concern for the governments of the oil producing states, for whom the Niger Delta Development Commission was set up. But it is really an intervention agency. It has been set up 20 years ago, and the argument and the discussion and the reality that concerns the NDDC and the Niger Delta people is that since the NDDC was set up, nobody in their right mind can say or should say that the NDDC in any way, shape, or form have achieved anything that it is meant to achieve for the Niger Delta region as an intervention agency. And it is rather sad that it is only after 20 years that the Niger Delta people, even the Niger Delta governors, are waking up to the fact that the Niger Delta Development Commission should have been probed. And basically, what that infers is that for 20 years, the people that have had the opportunity for themselves to run the NDDC, and the Niger Delta people who have been unfortunate enough to have people run the NDDC, that really did not and have not had the interest of the Niger Delta region, the interest of the people of the Niger Delta, the people that have paid the huge price of exploration of oil and gas, and the negative impact that we have suffered in the Niger Delta. We have had the misfortune of having people who have been appointed for political reasons. These appointments have been political appointments. I would have thought that the Niger Delta people, we should have insisted that the Niger Delta people should have had a contribution, a say in who was appointed in their name to run the Niger Delta Development Commission on their behalf. When the commission or the agency was set up, one of the things that was agreed upon was the fact that the appointments were to be rotated, i.e., the appointment of the office of the chairman, the appointment of the different offices were to be rotated along the alphabetical order, which is Abia, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Edo, Imo, and Ondo State. Now, Abia has had its turn, Akwa Ibom has had its turn, Bayelsa has had its turn. Some argue not the whole full years. Delta, Cross River has had its turn, and really, it should have been the turn of Delta State. Now, sometimes when these appointments are made, because they are made politically, like for instance, in 2015. When there was an appointment and it was more or less like an interim or acting capacity, while the government was waiting to appoint somebody full-time, even at the point of appointing an acting person, in my opinion, even the acting should have come from the state where it would have gone to after the acting. I hope I'm making some kind of logical sense. And so what then happens is that the Niger Delta people, the Niger Delta politicians, the Niger Delta so-called leaders and whatever, are left out or want to be left out of the process and the system that would deliver what is expected from the agency. They are left out, and they want to be left out to the extent that these decisions are therefore made on political basis. Fine, if a political party, i.e. the PDP at that time, is the political going to appoint, they have the right to appoint. But I keep arguing that these appointments should not be based on political followership, political leadership, political loyalty. It should be based on delivery. It should be based on what you can do. It's like appointing a bank manager and the person is a doctor. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if you have put an agency together that is an intervention agency, is a developmental agency, whatever agency that you have put together, you need at the helm of affairs, you need at the other processes going downwards, you need specific persons with specific exposure. Like, for instance, if you're going to appoint somebody to do with, I don't know, accounting, for instance, if you don't appoint somebody who already has a background, who is an accountant and who can chase figures and catch up with those figures, why are you appointing a person for? Even if it falls to Rivers State, surely there will be somebody in Rivers State that that can be appointed in that position where he will do or she will do a good job. And so this has been the failures of the agencies, not just NDDC, of every agency that the governments, subsequent governments have been involved in. Now, that there has been corruption, mammoth corruption, unbelievable corruption within the NDDC is not, we're not arguing about it. It's there. Now, what we want is that it should be traced. There should be a probe, there should be an investigation, there should be an auditing of the NDDC books from the day Chief Onyema Ugochukwu was chairman till the last chairman. Everybody must account for their tenure when they were there. What contracts did they give out? Who they gave the contracts to? The companies, who owns those companies? Those companies are not ghost companies. Who owns the companies? What's the name of the road? In what state? In what local government? How many miles of road? Where is the jetty? All of these things. I don't know if we remember during Obasanjo's time, there were supposed to be floating petrol stations that was set up. Money was brought out. The NNPC allocated, and I raised this particular issue. I raised it at the national conference. That they're supposed to be floating stations. They're supposed to be in the riverine area, not on land. In the riverine area, because they are floating. Because we in the riverine area, we buy products, petrol, kerosene, diesel, at a much higher price than people in Kano, Abuja, and Kaduna buy. Why is that? It is because it costs more to take this product into the riverine area than it does to drive it upland. So we were supposed to have floating petrol stations. Till today, if anybody has ever bought a liter of fuel or kerosene or diesel from a floating station, I will want to know. But you see, when these floating stations were created, money was allocated to the floating station. Money was allocated to pay the people who will work on the floating station. And allocation of petrol, of diesel, of kerosene was given every month to these so-called floating stations. I want to ask, where are those floating stations today? Where are they? And the allocation allocated to the floating stations, have they stopped? Are they still going on? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves for ourselves. It's not a crime, and we should not be afraid to ask this question. If you look into it, so the NNPC itself must be probed. So there are so many things that we must have answers to, especially when they are things that are set up for the interests of the Niger Delta people. And it is not left only to people like Annkio Briggs, people like Annkio people like rights activists, and then on top of that, people will be talking nonsense when you raise these issues because of their political interests. They won't even listen to what you are saying. They will say you're raising the issue because somebody that you want is not in power. What nonsense. People are in political position to serve me, to serve you. And I don't care who is there, as long as the person is doing what is right. It is when the person is not doing what is right that it becomes an issue. And these issues, these questions must be answered. Now, some of the questions as it concerns NDDC, how and why was it that NDDC was set up and allocation to be on the board were given to people that are outside of the Niger Delta region? I don't understand. What are they doing there? So now, coming back to the issue of the auditing, the forensic auditing today that is being called for. First of all, the governors that went and asked the president Buhari that NDDC should be audited, they're not the first people to have asked that. They're not. We've been saying this, that the NDDC, I know that I have been saying it, that they must audit. We must know, not only audit, the NDDC management itself owes the Niger Delta people a responsibility before money is released for the next budget. They should publish for us what they have done with the previous budget. We should know. So if they want to defend the budget of 2020, they should give us a detailed expenses of what they have done with the 2019 budget. If government did not release the budget, we should know. You cannot say NDDC management brought a budget of 10 billion and therefore we now accept that they got 10 billion. No. We must know, yes, did they bring 10 billion? Fine. How was this 10 billion broken down to? And how was it spent? And after the expenditure, was there anything left over? And if there was something left over, where is the balance? We need to know all these things before you will say that a budget is going to be defended. Now, the auditing of NDDC cannot just be auditing of 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It must be the auditing of the existence of the Niger Delta Development Commission. If it does not cover the whole of the existence of the Niger Delta Development Commission, then there are people somewhere thinking that they can fool the Niger Delta people. Because if you say you're doing an audit, you must do it from the first day that money was released for projects. I don't want to know whether it is a Niger Delta person, whether it is an Niger person, whether it is an Ikwere person or an Ogoni person that is going to be indicted. Everybody who have gotten a job, even if it is to supply 1 tipper of sand, we must know the person's name and we must know whether that person delivered that tipper of sand.